warning to our listeners, this week's episode does contain potentially triggering topics, including suicide, sexual abuse, and childhood trauma. If these topics are upsetting to you, then we completely understand that you might want to skip this episode or skip forward when we reach the content. Welcome to Screaming on the Inside with me, Celeste. Thank you all for joining us. Today, I'll be speaking with the wonderful David, who has taken some time out of his day to share his recovery experience with us. Hi, David. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, it's lovely to have you. Do you want to start off with just telling us a little bit about yourself and your recovery?
I don't know where to start. It was just over 3 years ago. I got the opportunity to go to Oasis in Runcorn. I'd had a period of sobriety before, but I was clean, but I was clean of substances. I wasn't acting or behaving clean. And I got all the outside things, the job, the girlfriend, new baby, doing all these wonderful things, managing England homeless football team around the world, and but inside I was kind of dying still, and I had a bit of mental health breakdown, and we'll get onto that in a bit. But with mental health, like, it's always it's because you're an addict. So I got the opportunity. I got some funding to go to Oasis for 6 months, and it kind of changed my life. Not kind of massively changed my life, but it gave me the footing. And now 3 years later, I'm able to sit and have a conversation with you.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I mean, 3 years, it's quite a milestone. So congratulations on 3 years. That is absolutely amazing. And perhaps you'd like to tell me a little bit more about the mental health side of things and how you feel that impacted your addiction. We'll talk a little, like you say, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But what was sort of the tipping point for you? When did things get unmanageable?
I think to get to a tipping point in anything in life, there has to be a beginning. And I think for me, it's important to speak about the beginning and the early years, because I believe that, especially for my mental health, but for the more that I speak to people with bipolar, with EUPD, it stems from childhood trauma. I was born in 1978 in Glasgow, and I was born in an environment that you would associate with Belfast more often when I speak about Belfast, because I've just came back from there, which is something else I'll go on to talk about. But I'm a Protestant. My dad was a Catholic. My mum was a Protestant. And so that was a kind of no-no. And their relationship was quite turbulent as well. And they were both really young. And I was put in the care system at a very, very early age. And that had a massive effect. Like, I'm now 44, but I've lived in 155 different properties in my life.
Wow.
By the age of 12, I'd lived in 72, give or take, different properties. I had various different surnames because I was moved from foster carer to foster carer to foster carer. But with my mental health, I believe it started at the age of 6. I was put in my foster carers, and these were going to be potential adoptive parents. And I was in there a few days, and it was really, really good. And I remember it vividly, and it fueled a lot of my hatred and anger for a lot of years. Was gone brilliant, and then my foster mum found a Rangers top in my belongings, and 6 hours later I was in my social work office looking for new foster carers. Gosh. Because I was a Rangers supporter and I was a Protestant, and they were a Catholic family, and it shouldn't have been placed there. And they were led to believe that I was neither.
Right.
Now, whether rightly or wrongly, that the social work should have told them that should not matter. That's a child. I was a 6 years old child, and it's taken me to get to walk the steps and to get specialist help to realise that I was a child, and that was the kind of the downfall. And when I was growing up, I was quite sectarian, and it's quite obvious to see why. And then I was placed in a temporary foster carer. That was my first experience of addiction. My foster brother, who was about 14, 15 years older than me, died of a heroin overdose in the next bedroom. And at the time, the social work and my foster carer wanted me to stay there still. But while he was being buried and everything else was going on, the upstairs neighbour, who was about 14 or 15, was asked to kind of look after me. I speak about this because it's not something that men speak about, especially men in recovery. We've got this, and men with mental health, we've got this bravado that these things only happen to women, or that it's only women that are strong enough to speak about it. And he sexually abused me over a 4-week period in a garden shed. Yeah, and it still, like, I still get that dirty feeling sometimes when I speak about it, and the emotion that comes with it. And there's times that because of my mental health condition, like, I see that happening 24/7 sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
I could be sitting having a conversation like this, and I can see visions, and I used to try and run away and hide from it, and that's how drugs in later life became a part, because it covered that up.
Yeah.
And then, so what that led to was my first mental health condition or addiction, whatever you want to describe it as. Some people describe it as either or, was bulimia. I was quite chunky as a child, and what I would do is, especially, that never came until I was about 12, until I was in a children's home. And you got, like, the old school children's homes in Glasgow, where, like, these old big Victorian mansions with 24 kids in them, like £1 million houses, like, you had, like, materialistic things. Anything you wanted, you got. There was a kitchen cupboard full of chocolate. You could just go and help yourself. And what I would do is I would go and I'd hoard loads of chocolate, and I'd make myself sick. And I'd wait till late at night, and then I'd go and, like, purge and make myself sick. And it gave me a release that I only ever found in ecstasy and cocaine in future life. That it gave me that release, and for half an hour of the day, I liked myself. I felt free. I felt a freedom that nothing had ever given me. And I also didn't feel fat, useless, hopeless foster boy that everybody else would call me at school. And it's weird when you speak about it. And it's only been diagnosed later in life. But I knew for a very, very early age what it was. And, like, at the time, there was an Australian soap, well-known soap, that had highlighted this problem way back in the 90s, and that's how I knew what it was. And people, like, even now, people say, like, but you're a big lad. How can you have bulimia? And I'm like, because people assume that it's only people with anorexia or likewise that have got, like, eating disorders. Like, I know lots of people in recovery that've got eating disorders that you just wouldn't think. And there's even a common misconception in because I work a 12-step program and I firmly believe in the 12 steps. However, I also believe that the 12 steps aren't the answer for everything. I need outside help. I need outside support. I'm very, very passionate about men in particular, speaking about eating disorders, speaking about being sexually and physically abused, because if we do it, then the next generation coming through will be able to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's incredibly brave, actually, of you to talk about such personal things, and very, very sort of grateful for you being so honest about it, because you're right. Men particularly don't really feel that they can talk about things like that and be vulnerable, and I think there'll be a lot of people listening to you today that will, feel a bit less alone.
Yeah.
Because you've shared that. And I just think it's incredibly brave. So thank you so much. And I think there's a lot there. I think I really relate to the childhood trauma and being in an environment that was just not supportive or nurturing, emotionally nurturing, and being rejected at an early age, and not being able to have a childhood, like normal children do. And I think that I think a lot of people in addiction came into addiction because of that self-soothing. Like you said, you put it perfectly. When you started with the bulimia, but then drugs and alcohol, it made you feel good, and that you liked yourself, and that you became a different person. And I certainly relate to that. I come from a very chaotic background. I have trauma and abuse and addiction in my childhood, and from a very young age, I quickly learned that if I wanted to feel good and feel better, then drink and drugs was the right way to go. And we're talking about mental health today because 30th of March is World Bipolar Day, and it happens every year. And Bipolar UK this year are urging members of the public across the UK to use social media to help share information about the disorder, and to get the event's hashtags trending. It's hashtag World Bipolar Day and hashtag Let's Talk Bipolar. We'll be putting those up on our own social media and encouraging conversations around mental health generally. But bipolar being such, it's a common factor we see in addiction. It's a bit of the chicken and the egg situation. Are you more likely to become an addict if you have bipolar, or can bipolar be a precursor to addiction? Nobody really has the answer to that, and I don't think there is one simple answer. I think there's so many factors involved, but I think a lot of people, like you've already said in your own experience, if you're suffering from a mental health issue like bipolar disorder, drugs and alcohol can become a very effective way to soothe those symptoms, actually, and can therefore make it worse over time. And it is a serious mental illness. It affects over 1 million people in the UK alone. Broadly speaking, it's described as a mood disorder. It's characterised by often unpredictable mood swings between depression and mania. I'm sure you relate to that. 100%. Right? Yeah, I don't know. You can tell me a little bit more about it in a moment, but I don't know about you, but I started to realise that my mood was never normal. It was never in the middle. It was always high or low. Right? But never somewhere in the middle, right? So the characterization between depression and mania, those episodes, is one of the main sort of characteristics, but it is a lot more complex than that. Like yourself, and certainly myself as a bipolar sufferer, my life became significantly disrupted as a result of my bipolar, and the addiction as a result of that as well. So studies have found that many individuals with bipolar disorder will develop an alcohol or drug addiction of some kind. Up to 43% of people with bipolar have some sort of alcohol or drug use disorder at any given time, which is that's a lot of people. And the people with bipolar disorder who have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder actually have a 60% chance of developing a drinking or drug problem at some point in their lives.
Wow.
Which is a big number. And I think, you know, as we've been sort of discussing, people who suffer from bipolar disorder often feel quite out of control or out of touch with their lives and unsure how to deal with the symptoms and the episodes that occur with the disorder. So therefore, drinking drugs becomes an appealing option. Drugs and alcohol can help relieve the negative symptoms of bipolar disorder temporarily, as we know, but over time it can cause an increase, a worsening of the disorder over time. The higher the high, the lower the low. Pretty much. And yet when we're in our addiction, it somehow feels worth it. So would you like to tell me a little bit more about your bipolar and perhaps, you know, a little bit more about what that looked like while you were in your addiction?
So one of the telltale signs and the elephant in the room, I suppose, and what doesn't get spoke about, especially when we are trying to address it within like drug and alcohol treatment services and stuff, is for me the elephant in the room is gambling. And I think that bipolar, that is probably how I knew like that I had bipolar. And it wasn't just like an addiction issue, because like even now in recovery, like my spending habits are just ridiculous. I will go through periods where I can keep money in the bank for ages, and then I will go through a period where I will just spend. Like I've got like 102 pairs of trainers. 44 of them are in boxes still.
Wow.
And it's like, and people say, oh, that's just, you know, that's because when I'm in that, whether I'm, especially in a manic period when everything feels like top of the world and brilliant, I'll go and buy 3-4 pairs of trainers a day sometimes. And even like people will just associate, will say, well, what about when you're in a low period, so you won't gamble then? And it's like, no, because my head will tell me, well, if you go and do that, you'll get that, your endorphins will be raised, you'll be all right, you'll get back to that manic stage. And it does me. And when I try and explain that, and people say, oh, that sounds like you're just an addict. No, I'm telling you I'm not, because there's a lot more process behind the whole thing. It's not a case of I'm uncontrollable, I can't stay at a betting shop, or I can't stay at a JD Sports. It's like my unlogical brain tells me logically that this is going to make my mental health better.
Yeah, and then you've just hit on something really important there, is that when you do have bipolar, your brain will essentially lie to you.
Yeah,
it's another thing, something that happened to me is that when I'm better now, but certainly when my bipolar was less well controlled, it would tell me that I didn't need my medication anymore.
Bingo.
Right?
Yeah, I'm still like that now.
Yeah, but you have to be aware of that. And this is why bipolar is so dangerous, because it literally tells you things that are not true, but it's your brain telling you that. So you have no way of being able to sit on the outside and go, don't listen to what your brain is telling you, because your brain is, I'm confusing myself right now just by talking about it. It is completely... you literally cannot trust the one thing that makes you you, right?
It's the most logically unlogical illness.
It's a bit mind-bending, and I'm really interested in the gambling and the excessive spending. I'm in recovery now, and my bipolar disorder is pretty stable, right? But my spending habits are appalling, and they are linked directly to my mood. Or yours is trainers.
Yeah.
Mine's books.
Yeah.
I have got so many books. I haven't read about 80% of them.
Yeah. Likewise.
I just can't stop. Like it is a compulsion. It feels like a compulsion.
And it is a compulsion, and so then people then link it directly to addiction and don't understand it. And I think that the biggest thing for me is like, so I was originally diagnosed with EUPD, and then I had like a suicide attempt, which I'll come on to April last year. And I was then diagnosed with still having EUPD, but having bipolar type 2 also. And like, I was talking to my university lecturer because she's got EUPD, and she was like, it's very rare for somebody to be diagnosed with both. And I'm like, it's not as rare as you actually think. But also the problem is because we spend too much time sort of pigeonholing people and sort of saying that you're this and you're that. And actually, if you get to know the person and listen to the person, the problem we've got, in my opinion, with mental health services is that you get a 1 hour assessment of a one individual. Like when I got at Oasis, and because I've also got PTSD as well, and it's actually a counsellor in Oasis that actually says to me that you got PTSD. He says 100%. I guarantee you when you go and get checked. He says I can't diagnose it, but I'm just telling you that's what I think it is.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it is.
That process of getting a valid diagnosis and also having someone see you as more than just a diagnosis and seeing you as the whole person. I mean, I know from my own experience and from my own research that getting a bipolar diagnosis can take around 10 years. And it's the same with any mental health diagnosis. And I think you're quite right. I think obviously our mental health professionals all do, they do a wonderful job. But I think I feel quite similarly to you that you might see 10 different people and you'd probably get 10 different diagnoses, right? And that can be extremely frustrating and difficult for someone who just wants answers, who's going through a really rough time, that their mental health is declining. They want someone to give them some help and answers and get them in the right direction. And for me, I think, and I don't know what you feel about this, but and again, it sort of comes from the AA side of things. My diagnosis doesn't really matter as much as it does being able to manage my symptoms and live a meaningful life. Where I came from and what caused it is less important to me now than understanding who I am, having tools to manage the difficulties we have, and having a holistic approach. How can I make my life more manageable? How can I look after myself overall to make my mental health as good as possible? And I'm not minimizing the fact that, bipolar is a serious, I have to take pretty hardcore meds to manage my mental health. I would not be functioning as well as I am now without them. However, having a wider lifestyle changes, I think that's what I'm trying to get around to. And for me, I think I realise now how I ever thought I could ever get on top of my mental health disorder while in active addiction was beyond me. I honestly thought that the drinking and the drugging and the other behaviours that I had learned over the years to self-soothe, I actually thought that they had nothing to do with my declining mental health. I wonder if you've had a similar experience. Were you in denial about your drug alcohol use?
So I was unconventional to an extent, and that my addiction with drugs and alcohol didn't really start until I was 21. and it came so quick. So like I was searching my whole life to be loved and to have a family, and I never had a proper family. And then one day, not long before my 21st birthday, I got a phone call from my dad. I didn't know was still alive, didn't know anything.
Wow.
So I went from having no dad in my life, no family, no brothers, no sisters, anything, to having a dad, a stepmom, a brother, a sister within 60-minute phone call. Literally, that was it. I
Wow.
then, at the time, I was fairly settled. I'd had the usual sort of teenage drinking, like drinking on a Friday, Saturday night with the gang and everything else, but nothing like me. 6 months, so I gave up my flat, my job, moved to a different city, moved in with my dad, my stepmom, my brother, and my sister. 6 months later, I was homeless, addicted to ecstasy, on in and out of hostels, and had no relationship with my family
In 6 months.
in 6 months.
Wow, that's a really quick decline, isn't it? Why do you think things got so bad so quickly for you?
Because I went from this kid who wanted this family, but being pretty like a spoiled child to an extent, and then kind of having everything that I ever wanted, and not being able to handle that, and not being able to handle the rules of a family. I had a sister who had been with the older sibling for such a long time, and then I got this little brother who looks up more to me than he did to her, and that created animosity. And then I always felt that I wasn't a part of that family because essentially I wasn't. I was just like
Yeah.
I was just like an add-on.
It must have been extremely difficult. Must have almost put you in back into a childhood state as an adult. Like
Yeah,
almost reliving all of that and having to reintegrate into a family that you essentially don't know, you didn't even know you had. I mean, that must have really brought up a lot for you. And it's really no wonder that, you ended up in trouble, emotionally,
yeah,
because of that. Um, 6 months, that's a really quick decline. I mean, I went from being a heavy drinker, an occasional drug user, and I've been ticking along fairly, okay, I guess, for many years. And I had a life event, and cocaine got involved, and I was on my knees within 3 months,
yeah.
and I wonder how. I always say that I'm actually quite grateful in a way that it happened that way, because had I not been on my knees and completely desperate, I don't know that I would have found the rooms.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, on that sort of concept of rock bottom and that turning point? Are you in any way grateful for that?
I am great. I am grateful that obviously I found the rock bottom, but like my rock bottom. So I got, as I said before, I got a period of stability, 2.5 years clean, and a 12-step day rehab for 3 weeks. So things were so everything looked great. I got a job as a senior support worker in a hostel. I run a project in Newcastle for people in recovery, like a football project. I got a role managing the England homeless team at the Homeless World Cup in Amsterdam, Glasgow, and Oslo. So on the surface, everything was great.
Yeah.
But after about a year, I kind of stopped going to meetings because life took over. Life was too busy. I had a little girl. I got in a relationship with somebody who is now one of my best friends, but if we're both honest, it probably wasn't the right relationship for either of us. And my mental health then declined massively. I done a step 4 and the abuse stuff came out, and it was the first I'd ever spoken about it. And my answer was, I'm going to start socially drinking on a Friday night. And then I found cocaine. And again, it was like a 6 to 8 months turnaround. Boom. I was on long-term sick through work. I was using cocaine 7 days a week. And that was my rock bottom. And the hardest thing in that was my little girl was only 3 at the time, and she came in the kitchen while I was sniffing a line of cocaine. And that was like the defining moment for me. And it was like, I need to go in. And then I went to Oasis, and it was a saving grace. But it was also one of the hardest things, because when I left Oasis, I had an option. Did I go back to Newcastle to my partner and my little girl, or did I go to Liverpool, where I knew a lot of people in recovery, where I knew that recovery was really, really strong, especially 12-step recovery? And do I essentially start again? And that's what I've done. And listen, there's days now that really kill me, because my little girl is now 6, and like I get her every holidays, I see her all the time, I speak to her 5 or 6 times a day, but I'm missing moments. I'm missing that first tooth, being able to put the money under the pillow. I'm missing that. I missed that first day at school, like being the person to take her there. But I get to see it all, but it's just, although you see it all, you don't necessarily feel part of it all.
Yeah.
But then that leads in to the mental health side, because for me, bipolar, UPD, whatever it is you've got, we all just want to feel part of.
Yeah.
Any recovering addict, any addict wants to feel part of. Like a lot of my addiction and the things I had done in addiction was because I wanted to be accepted by that group of people.
Absolutely.
And then when I came to Liverpool, it was like I was friends with everybody in the rooms, and now I've got a circle of 5 people. Got a really, really small circle in the rooms, and it's because I choose that circle to be small, because I've been burned so many times. But I also, because I'm so open and I'm so honest, I'm an open book. And if somebody asks me about something, I will tell them. And it's like, when I've been reading my step workout with my sponsor, and I talk about things, and it's like, at 24, like, I've lived in all these different foster carers, children's homes. I was sexually abused, I was physically abused, I was mentally abused. At 24, I got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. I went to bed on Christmas Eve 2003 after a night at partying, woke up 8 hours later with a lump the size of a golf ball. Have a phobia of dentists, thought it was an abscess, never went near a doctor. Got pointed out that I had to go to a doctor. 7 days later, I'm in hospital getting chemotherapy and radiotherapy. My granddad dies of the same illness Christmas Day 2004, exactly a year after I'd found my lump. When I tell people this, they're like, F off, that can't be true.
Right.
It's like, no way that happened. When I've been offered a publishing deal, like to write my life story, and it's just not got time to write it. But when I talk about it, I'm like, are people actually going to believe this stuff? And that's when I know that's my, and often when that happens, that's when my bipolar kicks in, and I go on these the depression stages is because it's like, I know all this stuff happened.
Yeah.
This stuff did happen to me.
It did, and that's part of the healing process, though, isn't it? Working your way through things. I really relate to that when I tell my friends or people that I've met about, because I'm like you, I'm an open book. I have no shame about my past. It's made me who I am. But when I do tell people about what I've been through as a child, about my dad's drinking and my family life and things, they sort of look at me as if to say, "What are you going?" You know, they're more traumatized than I am.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to be open about these things and to accept that we as humans, as people in recovery, you know, we can work through our traumas, but I think we'll always keep a little bit of that with us. And it's just important to know what those triggers are and to know. I mean, I you know, I hope you're the same as me, but having had, you know, lived with bipolar now for many years, I can see the warning signs. And because I'm sober, and because I've got a head on my shoulders, and you know, I'm looking after myself the best I can, rather than finding myself in a depressive episode or a hypomanic episode and thinking, oh, here I am, what do I do to fix the problem? It's like crisis management. Now I can catch the early signs and largely avoid really big swings. You know, but you know, we all just have to sort of live with it the best we can. And I think I also really like what you say about acceptance and wanting to be accepted. I think when we break it down, that is one of the biggest reasons any of us do anything, especially as young people trying to find our way, is, you know, all we want to be is accepted, right? And you know, taking drugs and drinking alcohol, if that helps us feel accepted, you know, that's just going to reinforce us doing it again and again, right? Even if, you know, over time it's making us more and more poorly. And if I may, I feel like the relationship with your daughter, you know, that must be really difficult, not being able to be there for all of the small things. But the fact is that because you're in recovery, you can be a dad to her, right? And you never would have had that opportunity without getting sober.
Definitely not. And like anybody that knows me, and like I done a main share obviously for me 3-year clean time, and one of the things that was the common sort of feedback off of people was like they love looking on my social media and seeing me and my little girl, because I spoke about with me dad and family. I was always looking for love. I was always looking for acceptance, and I've got that in abundance with that little girl. And I've never known what love is really until my little girl came along, and that is a love and a connection that will never be broken for anybody.
That's it. That's a connection. No one can take that away from you, right? And someone who lost my dad to addiction, to alcoholism 9 years ago, I'd give anything to have that relationship with him back. You know, the one thing I always feel most sad about is that I found the rooms and I found recovery, but he never did. And that was just the path that his life took. But I would rather have a dad that I saw every now and then, but was still around, you know, than not have one at all. And I think that anyone who gets well and then has a relationship with their children because of that, I think that's just so beautiful. I really do. How often do you see her then?
So I get every single,
on the holidays.
Every single school holidays, and I try and go up to Newcastle once a month. Obviously I see it every single day on FaceTime and stuff.
Oh, you FaceTime every day. Oh, that's so
So like
sweet.
literally, she'll ring me at 7:15 every single morning, and then she rings me after school, and then she rings me before bed.
Oh, that makes me feel so happy that you have
Yeah,
that relationship with her. And I think, yeah, to be able to have that, and it's really a testament, isn't it, to if we find ourselves desperate enough and at rock bottom, how life can be turned around.
massively.
Um, yeah,
I just think like one of the things that because I know I spoke quite a lot about 12-step recovery and stuff, and one of the things I find quite important is I'm on the UKAT alumni group, and and my friends on there, and he often posts, and he's 3 years clean, and he's flying, and he's wrote a book, and he's done a lot of really good things, and he's one of the people that always kind of talks about like 12 steps. They think they know everything and everything else, and I always say to him, it's like when we go at a conversation by saying, well, these 12 steppers make me feel uncomfortable by, then and likewise, if somebody who works a 12-step program says, oh, well, use that don't know what you're talking about, then we are actually doing what we're against, because we are actually trying to influence people. For me, recovery is about you. It's about what you get. Whether that be a 12-step program, whether that be smart recovery, whether it be you linking in with other people who have had similar experiences,
yeah,
it is unique to us as individuals, and I think it's massively important. And I also think it's like you spoke about it earlier. We look, or we seem to be seeking for labels
yeah,
when we get into recovery. Well, it's me mental health, I want a diagnosis, I want this, and he's actually just tried to ring me, but the manager of Oasis when I was in there is actually now my boss, because I work part-time in a different rehab because I'm at university as well, and he always used to say to me, we're seeking labels, and I've had a conversation with him now about it, and he says, I always knew what you had, but what we had to do was to get you through the addiction and get you to work through that, and then you can look at other things. And I think it's important because when we get into recovery, we seek to label ourselves as, well,
yeah,
I'm a 12-step recovering addict, I'm a smart recovery recovering addict. Why are you not just a recovering addict?
yeah.
And I think that for me is massively important. And I've got friends in the 12 steps who will be saying, what are you saying that for? And I'm like, because it's what I believe.
Yeah.
I believe that recovery is such a personal journey that it doesn't matter what it takes for that to work for us, because that's what it is. And it's also like, I've got a diagnosis of mental health, I've got a diagnosis of bipolar, I've got PTSD. Great, I know what it is. But that, just like you said earlier, that does not define me. That label is just something that I know. Okay, they know what it is.
Yeah.
I can work through that now.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're so right. You took the words right out of my mouth. Your diagnoses, our diagnoses, whether it be as mental health sufferers, addicts, recovering addicts, whatever those labels might be, they do not define who we are. You
yeah,
know, they might answer some questions, but
yeah,
they don't define who we are, and they shouldn't define our journeys either. And I cannot agree with you enough. And I always say on this podcast that yes, we might have a discussion around 12-step program, but and it might be something that's used in our centres,
yeah,
okay, and it is a beautiful, wonderful program, and anyone who is struggling, never ever rule it out as an option for you, right? It has saved lives. I'm a 12 stepper and I'm here for it. However, there are, like you say, there is no right or wrong way. The only thing we have to do is learn to manage life on life's terms and not pick up a drink or a
yeah,
drug or enact the behavior like gambling or excessive spending, whatever it might be. And especially on the alumni team, who which I'm a part of, and I speak to clients all the time, every day, and I love hearing about all the different things that people do to keep themselves well. And it isn't always AA or SMART. It can be lots of weird and wonderful things. And do what you need to do. If it works for you, then who are we to say that it can't be part of your recovery?
Exactly, but I think just to sort of summarise that, we have a responsibility as people in recovery not to close any path off for anybody.
Yeah.
What we say, what we carry, the message that we carry, the words that we put out there, we have to be really, really careful.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to influence somebody else's path in a negative way. And I feel that that's something that I just personally am really passionate about, is because we have to allow people to make those individual decisions and choices.
Yeah, I think it can be. That's a really interesting point, actually. If I suppose I can only go by what I would do. I mean, if I had a friend who came to me and said, I'm in dire straits, I'm desperate, I want to stop drinking, I need to do it today, I'm not going to lie to you. The first thing I would say is get yourself to a meeting and take it from there. However, once that person has got themselves in a position where they're able to then make, good life choices and think about how they then want to move forward in a long term, then absolutely,
but that's kind of what I mean is like, it's when we're in. So when we get to 6 months, a year clean, we've been going to meetings, and then we decide that meetings are for us. Yeah. Putting out a message that it's like a cult, or it's like this, and it's like that. That's not helping the next generation.
No, it's not.
That's using your negative experience to impact somebody else.
Yeah.
And also, the other side of the coin, going to meetings, getting this great spiritual experience and saying that's the only way. No, it's not. It's the only way that worked for you. It's the only way that's worked for me, but it does not mean it's the only way that's going to work for Joe Bloggs just coming out of treatment.
Yeah, works both ways, doesn't it? It really does. And I think it is about being open-minded and having respect and compassion for other people in recovery. And like you say, I'm a 12-stepper. I will always want to share the message of AA. However, I don't have an agenda. And I think that you will always have people that do have an agenda, and just be wary of that, and I'm really glad you brought that up, actually, because it is something I always like to touch on. I know that a lot of our alumni are keen to learn more about sort of non-12-step recovery options. Got a blog coming out, actually, alongside this podcast, which will be linked in the show notes, and it is actually looking at alternative methods of recovery, different things that you can incorporate into your recovery that you might not be aware of. And it's again, what we say is take what you want and leave the rest. And I really don't think there's any right or wrong way.
No.
March the 20th was International Day of Happiness, and we have been asking our alumni what makes them happy. Before I do that, David, what makes you happy these days?
Fitness, sport, so like when, for example, when I left Oasis, I was 22 stone 10. So just under 23 stone.
Yeah.
I was involved in football and stuff, and there was a picture taken of me, and it was horrendous. I had dyed blonde hair. I just looked absolutely awful in this picture, and it gave me a kick up the backside. And I got a period during the first lockdown where I had a suicide attempt, and a couple of people that I knew, an ex-world champion boxer called Derry. I'm going to name check him, Derry Matthews. Got me in his gym and started giving me some PT sessions. And I'm literally not even a year later, I am 16 stone 3 as of this morning. I done a white collar boxing fight at the end of last year. I'm fighting next Saturday. I'm at university doing health, nutrition, and physical fitness. I have just came back from Belfast on Wednesday, having taken 16 lads facing chronic social exclusion to play in an 11-a-side football tournament on Monday, which they won, and an 8-a-side tournament on Tuesday, which they also won. And so basically, yeah, I've basically and also I've just became a qualified PT.
Wow. You've got a lot going on there, David. I'm honestly, genuinely impressed, and well done on your sort of weight loss and fitness journey. It must feel so good. Do you feel better for it?
It's brilliant. I feel 100 times better. And the biggest buzz here is, like, I am now training people in early recovery and stuff who have come to me and asked, because they've seen my journey in terms of the fitness and stuff, and it's good, and it combats the bulimia massively.
Yes, we only really sort of touched on that a little bit, didn't we? But I'm guessing that and eating disorders isn't the thing I know the most about, but it must be something much like the bipolar disorder, and the addiction is just something that you're always going to have to learn to sort of manage. I guess having a sort of holistically sort of healthy approach to things helps keep that at bay.
100%.
That's fantastic. And the boxing, so you got a fight next weekend. So what do you have to do to prepare for a fight?
Eat properly, plenty of running. I was in this morning and I've done an hour with a personal trainer who kind of took me through some bag work and then various different exercises. Awesome. I think I burnt about 850 calories in about 55 minutes or something. So it's hard work.
I can imagine.
It's also about eating the right stuff afterwards as well. So no, it's good. It's really, really good.
Amazing. It just sounds like you've got such a what's the word I'm looking for? Not satisfying.
I've got a zest for life.
Zest, yeah. It sounds like you've just got, a passion. You found things that you're passionate about, and you're putting yourself into that. And I think recovery gives us that. I think that, certainly when I was in my addiction and my mental health was really poor, there was nothing left of me to put into anything, any passions, hobbies. I wasn't interested in doing things that were good for me. I certainly didn't have space for that. And like yourself, in my recovery, I've started to really sort of reconnect with the things that I used to like to do. So like I was always a musician when I was younger, and I'm in a band again now, playing bass, badly, but I'm doing it, and it's just I'm exercising more and just spending time doing the little things that bring me joy. And that's what International Day of Happiness is all about. It's just taking a day out to reconnect with the things and remind ourselves of the things, simple, big, it doesn't matter what they are, that sort of make us happy. And as I said, our lovely alumni have sent us in a couple of responses about what makes them happy. We've got one alumni says my grandchildren walks with my beautiful, I think it's a Weimaraner, which is a doggo called Storm, family, supportive friends, and last but no least, my newfound positive attitude, which is really nice. I've also got someone saying my sobriety by working my 12-step program. Well done. And also being totally sober since leaving rehab. And these are all, you know, great things to feel happy about. So I would encourage everyone out there, just take a step away from everything today and just try and take a minute to think about, you know, what really makes you happy. It's the gratitude, isn't it? And we all do it, you know, we're all told to do it as part of our recovery. And I don't know about you, but when I first started recovery, I would write my gratitude down. I'd write a list, and it was a daily thing. Now, I'm just naturally wired to find gratitude in things. I don't need to write it down. I'm not saying you shouldn't write it down. You know, if that's part of your daily routine, then great, you know, keep that journal. But for me, it is my whole worldview has switched from automatically finding the most negative thing in a situation to finding a positive. I wonder if you do you have a similar experience now? You just feel good.
It pretty much comes natural.
Yeah.
It just comes natural for me. It's kind of, you be grateful because it's there for you.
Yeah.
You see it in what you do on a daily basis. You see the opportunities that you get.
You're amazing. And I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of this, David.
I really hope so.
I can't thank you enough. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with David today. We wish him all the best in his future recovery journey and for the boxing match. And we'll keep you posted of any updates. You've been listening to Screaming on the Inside with me, Celeste. I just wanted to take a minute before saying goodbye to touch on something that my sponsor said to me the other day, which has really stuck with me. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and you know, I won't go into details. You all know what's happening in the world, and it's been difficult for everybody for different reasons. And I phoned my sponsor the other day in dire straits, and just feeling a little bit overwhelmed by everything. And she said to me, accept that we cannot be responsible for what happens in the world, but we ourselves can be the good we want to see. And that's really, really stuck with me. You know, we can't change the world, and it's difficult to watch, but we can share kindness and compassion and be just good people to those around us, and share a little bit of goodness. And if that's all we can do, then that's okay. Okay, everyone, take care out there. And remember, if you need support in your recovery, you can find a load of information and contact points for us at UKAT, that's UKAT.co.uk. You can also call us directly on 0203 949 6585 for the alumni team if you would like to talk. I'm going to leave some information in our show notes for you to have a look at. Where'll be a link to our resource page, our Facebook group. If you're not already a member, feel free to sign up, and a link to my blog on recovery methods that you can learn a little bit more about AA alternatives. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll look forward to seeing you soon.